right? These diagrams we are more familiar with, right? We have seen all this in your plus 2 levels. Now we will go on individually and find one more thing related to molecular orbital theory, that is bond order. Bond order is defined as half of the number of bonding electrons minus number of anti-bonding electrons, that is number of electrons present in bonding orbitals to that of, and minus the number of electrons present in anti-bonding orbitals. You do this and divide it by 2, you get the bond order. Okay, now these are all homonuclear, right? That's why you see all the energies are on the same level. This one and this one, these they are at same levels, right? Now the simplest one is of course the H2 molecule, right? When you have H2 molecule, you see what you have. You have here sigma. Now one more thing appears here, G, and here U. You see G and U, right? G and U are here. This I will explain it, right, shortly. But before that, let us explain this energy diagrams first, right? See, the 2 electrons, as we have seen in our general example, now will reside where? By Pauli's exclusion principle, any orbital can have at most 2 electrons, and by Hund's rule, what we have? We have that electrons will not occupy higher orbital unless and until the electrons are full in the lower orbitals, right? One more thing, and it will also not pair up unless you have it is all the orbitals of the same energy are singly occupied, right? Now we have only one orbital here, so both the electrons come up here. So that means, see, compared to the individual atoms, right, my hydrogen molecule is stabilized by this energy into 2, right? So suppose if this is daily, it is stabilized by into 2, see, because here this is the energy gap between the individual atom and the molecular orbital. Now there are 2 electrons which have come down here, so our hydrogen molecule is stabilized compared to this our individual hydrogen atoms by this gap multiplied by 2. Okay, then the next atom, that is our helium. If you go to helium, let's see, can helium form bond, right? See, for hydrogen, if you do this calculation, right, this bond order is half of 2 minus 0, because there is no electron here, so it is 1. Whereas for helium, now 2 electrons also occupy here anti-bonding, because this helium itself have 1 electron each more, right? So the bond order becomes, see, half of 2 minus 2, so it is 0. That means theoretically you can say helium 2 atom is not possible, right? Because why it is not possible? These 2 electrons is decreasing the system by delta E into 2, and these 2 electron is at the same time increasing the energy of the system by delta E into 2, right? As such, it is nullifying the stabilizing factor of these anti-bonding electrons. This is the effect that anti-bonding electron does, right? When an electron is present in the anti-bonding electron, as the name suggests, it is anti-bonding. It tries to break up the bond, right? So we have no bond here, so bond order becomes 0. The next one, if you go to lithium, see, now we have 2s orbitals, and what will be the bond order? For bond order calculations, molecular orbital theory says that you do not need to consider the core electrons or the core orbitals, right? you do not need to consider. You can do the calculations, but it will give you nothing, because these core electrons will always give you the zero bond order itself, right? You can only consider the frontier orbitals, right? Or valence orbitals. This will give you again a bond order of 1. That means this kind of molecule is possible, Li1. Saying that, again coming here, this is helium 2 is not possible, but helium 2 plus, this is possible. Why? When you pick up an electron, plus means you are getting an electron out of helium 2. If there is something like this, if you are taking one electron away, right, you are getting helium 2 plus. If you take out the electron, which electron we will be taking out? We will be taking out the highest energy electron. So one of these electron will go out, right, giving rise to He2 plus. Now if it is He2 plus, then you see the bond order becomes what? Bond order becomes half of, sorry, this will be 2 minus 1, so it will be 0.5, but still there is this is weak bond, weaker than the hydrogen bond itself, hydrogen bond, but a bond order is still there, so this kind of molecule will be possible. And if you have say 2 plus, the bond order will be 1, it will be much stronger bond, right? This is possible. Okay, similar with lithium also we can find these things. Okay. Now for beryllium, what will be the picture? For beryllium, it will be similar to helium, right? For beryllium, we will have one more electron here, right? One more electron here, and as such this will look like this one, and again the bond order of this one will be 0, right? So will be no bond situation, so this kind of molecule will not form. Okay, now up to this was fine, right? Now let us go directly to oxygen and fluorine first. And what we are leaving behind? We are leaving behind boron, carbon and nitrogen. We will discuss this shortly, but let us first discuss oxygen and fluorine first. Okay, so for oxygen and fluorine, the orbitals would look like this, right? So already say the picture has omitted the core electrons. The 1s orbitals are not here. We are just seeing sigma from P, and see here also there was sigma from S. There was only sigma from S here, right, till lithium and beryllium. Now we have sigma from S as well as sigma from P, because see what, for oxygen this is like this, and we have 4 electrons, right? We have 4 electrons here. So if you keep on filling up, now how many electrons we have? 1, 2. From Hund's rule we have to pair it first. 4 is gone, right? Then so it will be like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 electrons are occupied like this, right? And for fluorine we will have 2 more electrons here. Okay, but before discussing the fluorine, let us see some points of oxygen, right? See, now oxygen has what? 2 unpaired electrons. 2 unpaired electron for oxygen is here. This means if you have unpaired electron, now this oxygen molecule is 2 unpaired electron is there. That means they are paramagnetic, right? The oxygen molecule is paramagnetic. In fact, if you just go to YouTube or anything, just type that liquid oxygen and magnet, right? You will see if you have a stream of liquid oxygen and if you put a magnet here, right, it will be flowing towards it, right? So this shows that liquid oxygen itself is paramagnetic. This is one of the triumphs of molecular orbital theory over VVT. Valence shell theory said what? See, it said that oxygen is like this, and oxygen atom, what is happening? They are pairing up, right? Now in O2, then all the electrons would be paired up, right? In VBT, according to VBT, oxygen molecule have all paired up electrons, and as such it is diamagnetic. Right, this is the VBT picture, right? But experimentally it was found that oxygen was paramagnetic. This could not be explained by valence bond theory. This was actually explained by molecular orbital theory, and this was one of the earlier triumphs of MOT over VBT. Okay. See, now where the unpaired electron lies? The unpaired electron lies here. If you can see it, these are pi star orbitals, and we have a subscript G here, right? Subscript G, pi star, right? Not pi bonding orbitals, pi anti-bonding orbitals, right? And you can easily calculate the bond order also. The bond order will be, you do not need to calculate this one. Okay, if you say half of what is in the bonding orbitals, 2 plus 2 4 plus 4 8, right? And in the anti-bonding orbitals we have 2 and 2 4 minus 4, so it will be 4 by 2, it's 2, right? We say that this O2, that is dioxygen, have a bond order of 2, and by this way you can easily find, if you know this picture of molecular orbital of dioxygen, you can easily find the bond order of other dioxygen species, that is O2 plus or O2 minus, all these things, right? Or O2 2 minus. This is what? This is superoxide, this is peroxide, this is peroxide, O2 2 minus, and this is superoxide, right? You can easily find these electrons. See, O2 minus means there is one electron more, and where the electron will go? This electron will go to anti-bonding orbital, this electron will go to this anti-bonding orbital. Now if this electron goes to anti-bonding orbitals, then in peroxide it will be 6, and this one will become 1. That means, you know, you are familiar with this kind of drawing of hydrogen peroxide, right? That means there is a single bond between oxygen and oxygen. You are familiar with this kind of drawings of peroxide, where it says that there is a single bond between oxygen and oxygen, right? And this is a superoxide, where you have this you will have a bond order of 1.5. Okay, so superoxide has a stronger bond, oxygen-oxygen bond, than peroxide, and the dioxygen bond is even more stronger, right? Now this species, if you form a species like O2 plus, you will be taking out an electron from this anti-bonding orbital. That means you will be, now the bond order will be half of 8 minus 3, right? So it will be 2.5. You will be increasing the bond order, right, if you are taking out an electron from oxygen. Now this does not always mean that you are increasing the bond order if you taking out an electron. If you have to have the knowledge of the molecular orbital itself. If the highest occupied molecular orbital, that is the case here, what is it? This is called the highest occupied molecular orbital, HOMO, and this is the lowest unoccupied molecular orbital, LUMO. If the HOMO is anti-bonding in nature, then pulling out an electron will strengthen the bond. But if it is bonding in nature, right, if it was suppose not anti-bonding, if it was bonding in bonding molecular orbital, then if you are pulling out an electron, if you are pulling out from here, so it will weaken the bond, right? So just by looking at plus and minus, you cannot say. You have to have a clear knowledge of the energy ordering of these molecular orbitals, right? Now for fluorine it is same, right? In fluorine you have one more electron here and this will reside here, same as superoxide, right? It will now have same as superoxide, and the bond order for fluorine will be what? Half of 8 minus 6, that is 1. And we also know that fluorine molecules form single bond. This is also in concurrence with VBT. Okay, why I have shown this oxygen and fluorine before? Because this is much more symmetric in nature, and you are tend to do, if you want to draw molecular orbitals, you are tempted to do it like this, right? Because so that means 2s and 2p are individual entity and they are not interacting. This is true. This is true for oxygen and fluorine, but this is not true for boron, carbon and nitrogen. Right? Why it is not true for boron, carbon and nitrogen? Before going into that, let us see from Bohr's theory we know that the energy of an orbital is given by this one, right? This Planck constant, Rydberg constant, see atomic number and n square. So clearly we can say this is proportional to z square by n square, right? So as z is increasing, as z will increase, what will happen? It will decrease. Why decrease in energy? Because now you see there is a negative sign. This means this is stabilizing. Stabilizing in nature, right? This means this is stabilizing in nature. Negative sign because there is an attraction. More z means more neutrons are there in the nucleus, more will be attracted towards the electron will be attracted towards the nucleus. So see here it is, this is for hydrogen and this is for helium atom. We are now considering atom, right? Just to show that for the same for the first orbital, in Bohr's theory, right, we know that this has some defects, but see for n equals to 1, the energy for hydrogen was here, whereas for helium it has gone down here. Why? Because now for hydrogen z square equals to just 1, for helium z square equals to 4, so it has gone down here, whereas so everything, even the n equals to 2, for n equals to 2 is lower in energy, therefore then for hydrogens n equals to 1. That means, so as the z is increasing, as you go from left to right of the periodic table, the orbital energies are decreasing, right? And one more point, what? One more point is, see, as the n is increasing, now if you are increasing the n, see the difference is decreasing, as we have seen with the case of in the particle in a box. See, it is reversed. Why? Because there is a negative sign. As the n was increasing, what was happening in particle in a box? The gap was increasing. Here the reverse is occurring because there is a negative sign, right? Right. So you see the difference between 1 and 2 is much higher than 2 and 3, and there it is decreasing, right? With these two effects we can see, now understand this graph. What does this graph show? These graphs show the 2s and 2p orbital energies, atomic orbital energies. See, for lithium and beryllium there is no p orbitals, but from boron there is p orbitals also. P orbitals are little higher in energy, we know, right? But as the z is increasing, you see the orbital energy is decreasing, the s orbital energy is decreasing, and so is the 2p orbital in decreasing, but this gap is increasing. See, the gap for 1 and 2 for hydrogen was not that much, but gap for 1 and 2 for helium is very large. Then for 2 and 3 for hydrogen is very small, but 2 and 3 for hydrogen is significant. Same is the case with s and p orbitals of this second period. See, from boron to fluorine, if you go, the gap between s and p is increasing, right? In case of oxygen and fluorine, as we have seen in molecular orbitals, they do not interact. But if it is small, as in the case of boron, carbon and nitrogen, what happens? It becomes a little more complex. It is not simple anymore like this the molecular orbitals of oxygen and fluorine. It becomes more complex because there is now interaction between this s and p, and there is a degree of orbital mixing. A orbital mixing takes place, and there is what is called a sigma pi crossover. See, if you have remember that this orbital for oxygen and fluorine was below the pi, right? Below the pi. Now it is above the pi, right? So this is called sigma pi crossover. This sigma pi crossover takes place for boron, carbon and nitrogen due to this sp mixing, because now these lines are shown for sp mixing, because see, this sigma has contribution not only from 2s but also from 2p, right? That's why it is raised in energy a bit, right? Then because these two are close to each other now, that's why there is a change in energy ordering, and due to this change in energy ordering, your these diamagnetic and paramagnetic properties will also change, right? See, now this is the overall picture from boron to fluorine. See, here the sigma pi crossover is taking place. This is the sigma pi crossover, right? The sigma is going down and pi is coming up. This is our picture for boron, carbon and nitrogen. Now you see, if you do not know this and just you have drawn the same molecular orbital of oxygen and fluorine, carbon, see, if you have drawn it for carbon would have been paramagnetic, right? You have theoretically explained that carbon would be paramagnetic, right? If you have drawn carbon in this kind of if you have drawn carbon in oxygen's molecular orbital, oxygen type of molecular orbital, but carbon 2 is diamagnetic, and this is correct only if this energy ordering is correct, right? Where if you see, the sigma is above the pi, right? Now you can say that as MO is fully theoretical, MO is completely theoretical, right? Completely theory, right? You can say that how this energy ordering comes, right? This energy ordering can experimentally be showed, and they are experimentally proved from photoelectron spectroscopy. Photoelectron spectroscopy. Okay, so combining all these things, what we have this kind of a table that you can easily calculate the bond orders, right? Beryllium do not have boron, and the diamagnetic and paramagnetic in nature, right? So these kind of questions can easily arise, right? Giving rise that if say that boron 2 molecule is paramagnetic or diamagnetic, how you know it? You know it by your molecular orbital theory, right? So this is our discussions about the molecular orbital theory of homodiatomics. homodiatomics, right? These are homodiatomics. One more thing I would like to mention, this, if you have remembered, that is G and U. See, for sigma, G was the bonding and anti-bonding was the U. But for pi it is reversed, isn't it? For pi it is reversed. For pi the anti-bonding is G and this bonding is U. What does U and G stands for? Let us go to this picture again, then we will be understanding this one, right? Yeah. See, G and U means Gerade and Ungerade. G means Gerade, U means, these are German terms standing from that they are symmetric and non-symmetric. Why symmetric and non-symmetric? Say, if you have a center of inversion or not, right? Suppose this is the center, right? Center of the molecule, right? Now, or the orbital. Now, if you have any point, suppose if you have any point here. Now, if you go to this one, suppose this is, you have traveled R. Now, on the same, in the opposite side, if you again go R, right, you will find a point which is similar to this point. They are equivalent points. This kind of system is said that it has a center of inversion, and if you have a center of inversion, then it is called, you have G or Gerade. But see, here in case of anti-bonding sigma, suppose this is the center. If you start from here, you go here, you go find here, what you have here? It is the opposite phase, right? It is different. It was blue, here it was red. That means it is an opposite phase. So this is not the center of inversion, not the center of inversion. That means it is Ungerade. You say that is U. But for p orbitals, it is pi orbitals, it is opposite. Now it is the center. If you go here, so for pi bonding orbitals, it is reversed. It is U now. For anti-bonding orbitals, it is G. See, that's why it is reversed here. For sigma, it is Gerade for bonding, Ungerade for anti-bonding. For pi, it is Ungerade for bonding and Gerade for anti-bonding. Okay, now till now we have only discussed the homodiatomics. We will end our lecture today by discussing an example of this heterodiatomic molecule, right? And the most common example that you will find in your book is carbon monoxide, right? Carbon monoxide. Now see, for both carbon and oxygen, right, we are considering the valence electrons or valence orbitals, that is 2s and 2p. On the left and right hand side, we have the individual atomic orbitals. See, the energies of oxygen atomic orbitals are much lower than those of carbon. Why it is so? Because from this formula we have just seen, right, they are lower. And you see there are some mixing also, right? With all this mixing consideration, this is the what we get, the actual energy ordering. This is in conformation with from photo electron spectroscopy, right? This is the energy ordering, right? So we call it sigma. So there is no bonding or anti-bonding type of thing, because as they are all lower in energy, right? Both are bonding in nature, and we just designate it as 1 and 2. And we see these are, then there is pi, and then there is sigma. So it is more like what? More like the nitrogen type of thing. It is like the nitrogen, like nitrogen molecular, like nitrogen MO, right? The energy ordering is of like nitrogen MO, right? Not like oxygen. Huh? Okay. Now by energy ordering, you just put the electrons as by Pauli's exclusion principle and Hund's rule. You have what? You have 4 electrons here and 6 electrons here. You just do this and you find that this sigma type of orbital, this is the HOMO now, highest occupied molecular orbital, and this is our LUMO, sorry, LUMO, LUMO, lowest unoccupied molecular orbital, right? Now this is fully occupied, this HOMO, and this look like this one, right? The shape is this one. Why the shape is not symmetric now? Because these two are of not same energy. These carbon and oxygen are not similar in energy, so the shapes are different. You see, this one sigma has a lobe more close to what? More close to this oxygen. The lobe of 1 sigma is more close to oxygen. The 2 sigma is rather on carbon. That means if the electron pair is in 1 sigma, you can find it more on oxygen atom. Why? You see, this one is much close to energy with 2s of oxygen, and this one is much close to energy with 2s of carbon. That's why it is much more on carbon and this is much more on oxygen. Okay, so that's why the shapes are not symmetric now, and the pi bonds are looking like this one. We have seen these pi's are. Why these two? There are two because there are 2 pi orbitals. One in the along the x, we are viewing along the x-axis, and another along z-axis. So there are actually 2 of them. 2 lobes are there, right? So they are these 2 pi's, and another, this one is sigma type of orbital, which is centered on, you can clearly see it is centered, the larger lobe is on carbon. So these 2 electrons are most likely to be found on carbon, right? You can find these 2 electrons more on the carbon than on oxygen. So this is the structure of carbon monoxide. Now what to think of this? Why we take the example of carbon monoxide? This carbon monoxide is considered a very strong ligand. When we will study the crystal field theory, we will see that this induces very large crystal field splitting, right? So this is actually called pi acid ligands, right? Why they are called pi acid ligands, right? See, they are donating from the sigma orbital, and why are acids? Acids are electron acceptor. It can accept electron from the metal orbitals in these pi orbitals. Back donation, metal back donation can be done from metal orbitals to these pi orbitals in the LUMO. As such, they can form very strong bonds with metal, right? This acceptance of electrons in the pi antibonding orbitals in weaken the CO bond itself. The CO bond will be weakened, right? This will become weak, but the metal carbon bond will become strong, right? Now that's why they are called pi acid ligands, right? Now see, these pi orbitals are also centered on carbon. See, the bigger lobes are on carbon, right? So the axis is like this. So the donation is from carbon side, the acceptance is from carbon side. That's why it is due to this reason the explanation is given by molecular orbital, that you see, whenever a carbon monoxide bonds with a metal, it bonds to the carbon side rather than from the oxygen side. Though oxygen is more electronegative than carbon, it bonds to the carbon side. What is the reason? The reason is clearly evident from molecular orbitals, that the HOMO is centered mainly on carbon, and the LUMO is also centered on carbon, right? That's why it is bonding through carbon side. And one more aspect, see, carbon and oxygen differ in electronegativity, so you should expect a dipole moment, right? But a dipole moment is very nearly zero for carbon monoxide. This is because the electron negativity tends to pull the electron towards carbon, but this molecular orbital theory shows that electrons most of the time reside on this carbon, right? As such, they cancel out each other, then have a net dipole moment nearly zero. That's why these two facts can be explained only by the molecular orbital theory, that carbon monoxide binds metals to carbon side and they have nearly zero dipole moment, right? So with this we comes to the end of today's lecture. In the next lecture we will study about this pi molecular orbitals of olefins, right?